Hello, my name is Sidney Portnoy, and I am chair of the board of the Holocaust Memorial Miami Beach. It gives me great pleasure to be able to say a few words on behalf of the organization who sponsored Names Not Numbers in your school. We are currently living through extraordinary times and have had to adjust to our new reality. Under these conditions, working from your homes, we were able to complete this project, and for that we are grateful to all of the students for your dedication. Thank you to the teachers and schools for ensuring that your students could benefit from the Names Not Numbers program. This year, schools from Miami, Broward County, Palm Beach County, and Orlando all participated, creating documentaries that will be a part of the historical record. You should all be very proud. Most importantly, I want to thank our Holocaust survivors who participated. They are true heroes, and we are forever indebted to these brave individuals who volunteer their time and give of their heart. To all the students who participated in this project, I sincerely hope that you take with you memories that will last a lifetime. Thank you to Sharon Horowitz, Executive Director of the Holocaust Memorial Miami Beach, and Daniel Reed, Education Coordinator, for sponsoring the Names Not Numbers program for the second year. Recognize the importance of this program, the Florida Department of Education generously funded our efforts. Our deepest appreciation to Tova Rosenberg, the director and founder of Names Not Numbers, for creating this program, and to the filmmakers and editors who helped create these films. As time marches on and our precious survivors continue to age, it is up to the next generation to stand up against all forms of racism and bigotry. The films you helped create are a testament to the importance of teaching about the Holocaust and triumphing over hatred. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Scott Saperstein, and I am the proud principal of Ruth K. Broad Bay Harbor K-8 Center. On behalf of our entire staff, I would like to thank the students, educators, the Names Not Numbers staff, and especially the survivors for their wisdom and caring nature. A special thank you to Ms. Susan Boundy, as she will be retiring after a very successful career in education. The Names Not Numbers project is a phenomenal opportunity for our students to experience history through the eyes of those that persevered in the face of adversity. The project allows for our educators to use primary sources for teaching history and bridges the gap that may exist between teens and their elders. Please join me in applauding all those involved with this great piece of filmmaking that will serve as a resource for current and future generations. Thank you.
Tell me a fact and I'll learn. Tell me a truth and I'll believe. But tell me a story and it will live in my heart forever. The Names Not Numbers Oral History Film Documentary Project is remembering the stories of the Holocaust and is telling the story of the Holocaust for the world to hear, for the world to learn, and to inspire future generations to combat anti-Semitism and all forms of hatred and intolerance. This unique project is in its 16th year. Over 2,500 survivors and 6,000 students have participated in it worldwide. The students were instructed by teachers and professionals. They learned interviewing techniques from journalists. They learned filming techniques and editing skills from documentary filmmakers. The students interviewed, filmed, and edited the 2-hour interviews with each survivor to make 20-minute oral histories that are compiled in the Names Not Numbers documentary at the school. You're about to view the documentary Names Not Numbers, a movie in the making. This film chronicles the students as they are being trained by the professionals and includes their reflections. In it is embedded approximately 10 minutes from each interview. This is the students' work, their filmed and edited interviews. Through this project, our students are preserving history, and they are the witnesses to the witnesses.
If I wouldn't have promised my beloved mother that I would survive, I would have not survived.
We were hearing the heavy bombers flying above, so we could guess that there was something going to happen. We had a life like today, and from one day to the other, we had to leave everything.
We couldn't get ready. We couldn't do anything. I had a feeling in my gut that this is the last time I'm going to see my house.
And there was no time to say goodbye to each other. And we never ever heard from the people who were left.
Every single day while I was in the camp, I was crying for my mother.
There's just no words to describe how inhumanely we were treated.
What a wonderful opportunity you all have to experience firsthand history. And here you are. It's like a page from history is walking through the door to talk to you and give you their personal firsthand experiences. This is your opportunity to ask a question. Not many people get opportunities like that.
I had first heard about the Holocaust when I was about in 3rd grade.
I used to go to Hebrew school, so I would learn a little bit about the Holocaust, but I didn't know that much.
I knew facts about it, but very little.
I was in shock when I heard that people just do this because of discrimination. They don't like your religion.
Imagine having to go somewhere else because people are hunting you and your family down. It's not right. It's not ethical in any way.
In a way, it was disgusting that humans had to go through that and humans caused that.
Though the Holocaust happened many, many years ago, your parents were not in existence. So here we are, not a generational gap, but a multi-generational gap to learn about the Holocaust and to hear about it firsthand. At some point, as time moves forward, that living person that jumped out of your history book will no longer be living. So this is an opportunity that you really need to take in and learn from.
Unfortunately, we won't have that many chances to speak to survivors, so it's really important to talk to them while we can.
You know, knowledge is power, and without that knowledge, you cannot move forward. You know, there's a saying that goes, you need to understand the past to live in the present, to be able to move forward in the future. And that's what this opportunity is. Take it in and learn from that experience.
The reason that I wanted to do this project was because I want people to have the right information on it, and I want people to always remember what happened.
I wanted to have the experience to talk to a Holocaust survivor and know what they went through and learn their story.
I decided to do this project because I thought it would be a good opportunity to learn and educate myself more about the Holocaust.
I decided to do it because I always found the past to be a very interesting subject. There's so much to learn there, so much that we could learn from it.
I want to thank you all for participating in this program and being a part of the Names Not Numbers project. So you are all now embarking on a project where you are going to be a part of history. Because what you're going to help create, the end result is going to be a historical document, and that will be archived in educational institutions.
This project is important because they have gone through so much that it's just, they need their stories to be let out and not keep it inside of them, and everyone should know.
We need to know our history to be able to better shape our future, because history does repeat itself.
From the survivor's perspective, one of the things that bothers them the most, that frightens them, that people will stop wanting to learn about the Holocaust, find out about the Holocaust, and worse than that, that people will stop believing that it ever happened. So that is also one of the reasons that makes what you are going to be doing so special.
I think this is a really good opportunity to share the survivors' stories, because Most survivors, in my opinion, I feel that the reason why they tell their stories is to raise awareness so that it doesn't happen again.
You are embarking on something where you're going to have create an intimate one-on-one experience with a survivor, and you are going to be the witnesses to the witnesses.
The difference between a book and a person, I would say, is a book's, it's just there, basic facts. It tells you what you need to know. It doesn't really put too much emotion into it.
Names Not Numbers, I feel like it goes beyond the history books and it actually tells you someone's actual experience from what happened to them.
When you're interviewing a person, you get to see their experience, their side of the story, and what they went through. This is interesting to me because I want to learn more about the past and more how we can prevent this from happening again.
I want to do Names Not Numbers because I wanted to experience a chance to talk with living history.
Today we also watched one of the videos made by Names Not Numbers, and it showed us a good example of what these interviews could look like. It was very well made, and it was emotional.
Officer, and he started to count. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, above face, and they took me with this group to the train station, and that's the last time I saw my brother.
That encouraged me to stay with this project, definitely, and that I was very lucky to be chosen.
This is a great school project. You're going to be learning a bit about interview techniques, about how to ask questions. You're going to be learning about how to use the cameras, sound.
When you film with your phone, do you film this way or this way?
Today we worked with the camera and learned about how to work the sound, and we learned about different shots of the camera.
The reason why we'll use our zoom is to create different shots. So we're going to use our zoom to create a wide shot. We're going to use our zoom to create a medium shot and the close-up, right?
I learned about the rule of thirds and how you don't want your videos to always be really center.
But since we're going to be following the rule of thirds for this documentary, this is where Jack's going to sit.
Michael showed us how to control the cameras. Each of us would go and take actions, zoom in, focus.
Really, we want it to be around here, -15, some people say -12, and that way it's loud enough, but it gives this space because our biggest fear is we don't want it to hit red. We call it hot sound or clipping, and you can't get it out in post. So we have to make sure that we don't hit red.
And then we were rotating jobs, so we also got interviewed. We asked questions. I think I have a little more of an interest in filming because before I didn't really have one.
Today we went over interviewing techniques, how to interview people, how to talk to survivors, tips to talk to survivors.
In general, right, when you want to do a story or you want to interview somebody, what are the things that you focus on? What does a journalist focus on?
One tip I learned from Denny Reed was if you have eye contact with them, they feel a connection, they can easily gain more trust and they can tell you their story.
And to not just solely rely on your questions, to also elaborate and improvise whenever needed.
So if you want to learn about a bit of their world or their life before the war, what are some questions that you would ask?
Something that I learned is, for example, yes or no questions are something that we should not ask the Holocaust survivors because it doesn't give any detail or depth.
We should ask open-ended questions every time.
Let them tell their story. Let their story breathe. Everyone's afraid of an awkward silence, right? Because, you're afraid, now that they stopped and there's that space, that gap, I should ask my next question. Well, if you let that space breathe a little bit, they might add something more that they were never given a chance to say. They might still be in the middle of their story too.
I'm kind of feeling eager to hear her story and to listen to what she went through.
I'm excited to see his experiences and everything, how he went through it, how he got over it. I'm excited to experience what it's like to interview somebody and be an interviewer. Maybe this could be something I do in the future.
I'm looking forward to seeing people's reactions.
One thing I'm looking forward to is just seeing the final product, seeing what all the groups put together and how it started from nothing and now we've made a movie.
I'm going to be interviewing Fred Mulbauer.
I'm going to be interviewing Shelley Levy.
We are going to be interviewing Magda Bader.
I'm going to be interviewing Alex Gross.
My name is Alex Gross. I was born in a little village called Palanok, used to be Czechoslovakia. We were 7 brothers and 1 sister. My father had a tailor shop. He was very strict, but he was very kind and very good. My mother was a true angel. She loved us. She took good care of us. We were the only family that 6 brothers and 1 sister survived the Holocaust. Unfortunately, I couldn't go to school. I went to Cheder, to Jewish school.
My name is Magda Bader. I was born April 17, 1930. I was born in Czechoslovakia in a town called Munkac or Mukachevo. I came from a large family. I was the youngest of 10 children, 6 girls and 4 brothers. My mother, she was a housekeeper, and my father had a big business of men's and ladies' custom-made tailoring. We lived in a big house, everything on 1 level, with a big yard, and behind the house we had a big fruit orchard, also where my mother grew vegetables. I attended a Zionist Hebrew elementary school, where every subject in the elementary school was taught in Hebrew language. I enjoyed being with my friends, my student friends. We used to go to have ice cream together. I enjoyed my little niece who lived with us. She was only 3 years old when we were taken away.
My name is Shelley Levy. I was born in Yugoslavia, Belgrade, May 21st, 1937. My father was the owner of a factory. I had a brother 2 years older than me. His name was David. We called him Dido. We celebrated all the holidays with my grandparents, with the cousins. We used to go on vacation. It was a very close-knit family.
My name is Fred Mulbauer. I was born on December 28, 1929. I was born in a stavna in Czechoslovakia. My father was a tailor. My mother was a housewife. She did a lot of work. I was the youngest. Then I had a sister, and then I had a brother who was about 8 years older. We are friends. We were going to school together. I went to school in my hometown. Unfortunately, I did not get much education. My education came from self-taught.
There were almost no anti-Semitism in Serbia. So the Jews were really sort of unprepared.
Anti-Semitism wasn't very prevalent while we were Czechs, although I remember when I was walking to my elementary school, there was one street where there were kids in families, and they would yell across the street, "Dirty Jew," like every day as I was walking to school. But I learned to avoid that. I walked on the other side of the street. There were no major coincidences around my area at that time.
Unfortunately, my country was occupied in 1939 by the Hungarians. And when the Hungarians came, very, very bad things happened to the Jewish people.
We thought that nothing would happen to us. So it just like as if it caught us by surprise.
The Hungarians took over the village from the Czech people, and we were treated very inhumanely.
When we became Hungarians, I had to go to a Jewish girl middle school from the grade of 5th, 6th, 7th. And that's as far as I went to school at home.
We couldn't go to public school anymore. and we had to have our own Jewish school. I was beaten up many, many times. They broke our windows, and my father couldn't practice his trade anymore. Jewish people couldn't read the newspaper. They could go to jail for 10 years, and we couldn't own a radio, and so on and so forth.
I had to run away because the Hitler Youth were attacking me. My best friend, neighbor across the street, became a Hitler Youth, and he started hating me. So I ran away first to one village, came home. They found out I had to run away again to Budapest. Well, I was very lucky. I had a good voice. I was in the boys' choir there, and they used to give us free cookies and milk, and that sustained me. I was singing Yiddish. Was es gewesen, scheine Stuhl, scheine weg in jener Zeit, in jener Schuh.
The Germans came in and everything changed.
Yugoslavia was invaded by the Germans in 1941. It started with the surprise bombing of Belgrade on a Sunday, April 6th. And we had just escaped 3 days before. My father, at that time, he was an officer in reserve, and he was mobilized outside of Belgrade. So my mom was in charge of us, and she didn't want to move anywhere. We had an uncle who was supposed to leave with his family, with some friends, but these friends, somehow, they left before. So he started coming to our house to pester my mother. Finally, my mother gave in. It was something really like miraculous that we left 3 days before the bombardment.
In 1942, any brothers who were at home, they were called into what they called forced labor. And there were 3 brothers who were in that situation. The 4th brother, we did not know what happened to him, just disappeared from Prague. My sisters came back because they went to universities. We were still in our home till 44. We couldn't go out grocery shopping very easily. The farmers who used to come directly to the house, now they were not allowed to come. We had to wear a yellow armband.
There was a knock on our door, middle of the night. My father answered it, and there was about 10 German soldiers, and they said, "You have 15 minutes to get ready."
After Budapest, I went back home. Passover was almost over, and they knocked on our door and started screaming, "Jude raus, Jew out."
We couldn't get ready. We couldn't do anything. I had a feeling in my gut that this is the last time I'm going to see my house, which is a fact. I never saw my house again. We had our neighbors who we grew up with. They started dancing on the street. They were pulling out the furniture from our house. They were so happy that the Jews are being taken away. My parents helped them a lot, but they didn't reciprocate.
We would travel at night, mostly by train. We needed to be sort of in hiding, but it took us about 2 months. My brother and I got sick, so we had to stay in a little village. We were in a great danger because all that area was full of what they call the Ustaše, were like revolutionary people in Croatia. They were allied with Hitler. We were very lucky that we were able to reach Dubrovnik.
Towards the very spring of 1944, Hitler's arms dictated to the Hungarians what they should do to their Jews. And that's when we were forced to leave our home in 24 hours. So we did not know for how long we will be in this ghetto. And what we could carry was just very limited. Maybe an extra jacket or some jewelry that we could maybe sell and buy food. We were 5 sisters at home and my little niece and my parents. And we moved in with some relatives who lived on that street, very crowded conditions.
Well, we had no living conditions. We had no beds. They didn't give us food, water, nothing. Only thing I ate is whatever bread that we brought from home. We had to dig ditches. We had to do a lot of things, just slave labor. We were only there about less than a month.
We were in the ghetto for a very short time, and I had to help with the older people or with little children to feed them or to bathe them. Taking care of each other was what we had to do. From there, we were forced to leave the ghetto and go to this big open air brick factory. We had to walk very fast, we were told. And my grandfather, he couldn't walk very well and he fell. My mother tried to help him stand up, and the guard hit my mother and forced her to leave my grandfather on the ground. And that's the last time I saw my grandfather.
In the meantime, the Germans invaded the Yugoslav army. The government just surrendered. So my father was lucky that he was sent home. He thought that we were still in Belgrade. He got a special permit to go to Belgrade. And at one of the stations, in all the chaos with the hundreds and hundreds of people trying to get into the trains and to safety, he bumped into this friend. And so his friend said, "Hey, Aaron, what are you doing here?" "Well, I'm going to Belgrade to see my wife and my kids." And so his friend said, "I saw her going to the other direction. She went to Dubrovnik." I don't know what would have happened if my father doesn't bump into this friend. Overnight, he erased the name Belgrade on the permit, and he put Dubrovnik. And the next day, he took the train to Dubrovnik. That was another miracle.
We were first in this open-air brick factory. The reason they took us there because this space had railroad tracks, and the intention was that they would take us somewhere from there. And we were forced to be on the outs there for a few days. And there were guards who were on lookout towers watching if anybody is trying to maybe escape. So they were shooting randomly.
They took us to a railroad station, and I looked around for a train, and what I saw was the freight trains where you take animals, and I said they couldn't put us on that train. It's unhuman. Well, sure enough, they put in 100 people in each train, on each car. There was no room even to sit down, let alone to lay down at night. But of course, we didn't know how long our trip is going to take. And the only thing they put in the car was 2 buckets. One bucket was for drinking water, and the other bucket was for sanitary purposes. And people were hungry, people were thirsty.
The light came only through a little opening on top of the cattle cars. For the animals, that was enough, but for so many people, it was very dark. And then on these cattle car openings was barbed wire, so people should not even think of to be able to escape through those openings.
The train ride was truly hell, and it took us 4 or 5 days to get to the next destination, which happens to be Birkenau.
We never heard about Auschwitz or death camps or extermination camps. We were hoping that the family would stay together, the young adults would work, and the parents would be taking care of the rest. But that was not what was happening.
There was a lady sitting next to, and she was there alone except for 3 small children. When the doors opened up, the German soldiers jumped on the train and started yelling, out, out, out. They had a whip, and on the other hand, they had a big German Shepherd dog leash. And when my mother saw that these children wouldn't be able to carry fast enough, so my mother picked up one of the children. As she jumped off the train, the first thing the German soldier says to her, "You're going left."
We have to move very fast. Mothers and children going in one direction, younger women in a second, and men, fathers, grandfathers in a third. They kept repeating that we're going to see each other soon. We believed that was going to happen, and there was no time to say goodbye to each other. I held my mother's hand and also one of my sisters, but I let my mother's hand go, and she ended up going with my sister and her baby. So I went with my other 3 sisters, and my father went this other direction.
I was staying in line with my father until we got checked by Dr. Mengele. He checked if anybody was qualified to work. Then you stay alive.
Somebody whispered to me, "You're 18 years old." So when the SS man asked me how old I was, I said 18, because anybody under 18 and over 30 were sent straight to the gas chambers.
In Dubrovnik, there were a lot of refugees. So we moved to a little island called Korčula. We stayed for about 4 or 5 months until the Germans started approaching. So we knew that we needed to move on. From Korčula, we went to Italy. We boarded what was to be the last ferry boat. We didn't know at that time. My father's brother with his wife and kid, they were supposed to join us on that ferry boat, and he didn't make it. He is not in any archives. It's as if he disappeared from the face of the earth. The only thing that we can think of is that he was caught by the Nazis and just killed on the spot. When we were on the boat, the men were kept at the bottom of the boat and they were in chain because the captain, he was saving our lives, but he had to sort of show, in case he was intercepted, that we were his prisoners.
When we arrived, we were told to go towards one barrack, and whatever we kept in our hands, we had to dump it onto this big pile. The next barrack was to disrobe whatever we were wearing from home, and the third barrack we would have our heads shaved and also have a disinfecting shower. So whatever we were wearing, whatever we looked with the hair, we no longer recognized each other. No towels or soap. We had to move very fast out on the other end of the barrack and just pick up some clothes to wear that was on a big heap of clothes that belonged to other people.
Well, first they had us take our clothes off. Then they burned a number into me. They said, "You have no more name, just a number. It's still there."
We received a number, but not tattooed. We got it like a little thing here with a number written on it. We were not tattooed.
I did not receive a number. When they took us in our transport, they were in such a hurry to get rid of us. They had no intention to keep us alive, just like our parents, my parents. So for us, they didn't give a number.
And they put us up in the barracks with just shelves for beds, just like a shelf.
10 persons on each shelf. We were supposed to lie. And no blankets, just on the bare wooden planks. If we were not lying down, we were standing outside, waiting to be counted or waiting to be selected. We never knew what will be the selection for. This was a daily occurrence. We spent 90% of the day standing outside to be counted or to be selected.
Because I said I was 18, I was sent to Auschwitz, and from Auschwitz I was sent to Bunovec or Buna. I was there for 8 months, and the average lifespan was 3 to 4 weeks. I was so happy I found a brother there, but we were not allowed to look at each other, let alone talk to each other. They used to give us about this much bread once in 3 days. They used to give us soup every second or third day, and the bread had to last me 4 or 5 days.
We were always hungry, we were always thirsty, we were always terribly dirty. There were not many facilities to keep clean. And that's how the days went. We did not work. We were told that something will be going on, and for a few times we were selected to go somewhere else, and they put us into another barrack and put us for another disinfecting shower, because Auschwitz by that time was in danger of that the Russians were getting closer, and the Germans wanted to make the camp less big.
I got a job, it was so bad. They were sending the people to the gas chamber. They told them that they get a shower. You hang up your clothes. He says, and when after the shower, you come back and put on your clothes. And my job was, I had to run into that room and take out the clothes. While I was there, I could still hear people screaming because they realized that they're being fooled, that it's not a shower. And I always thought although my mother was gassed a few days ago already, but I always heard her voice yelling. If I would have stayed there much longer, I probably would have committed suicide.
We arrived to Trieste safe. We were received by a committee of they were taking care of refugees. And from there, we were sent to a small town. And when we came down the bus, the whole town was there. They thought that the Jews had horns. That was their belief for centuries. So when we came down the bus, the villagers started looking at each other, open eyes, mouth wide open. My goodness, they just look like us Christians. So life in Bardi was really safe. My father was very resourceful. So one day he noticed that there were a lot of bees. They found a book. They became beekeepers. They were given chickens and butter and milk and bread in exchange for the honey. After 2 years, the government fell. And from one day to the other, we had to leave everything and to go into the unknown.
Well, death march from Buna to Gleiwitz, 25,000 people. Less than 1,000 arrived because anybody that slowed down was shot. No food, no water, and miserably cold.
We were not there too long in Auschwitz. We were there like 6 weeks and were sent to another camp. And while being sent to another camp, somehow the nationalities got mixed up. There was a boy who was alone, and this boy is about my age. We could understand each other already, and we became very, very close. He took me to garbage cans, which he found when the Germans used it for garbage cans. Were there, they had some food, some leftovers, some potato peels, and he just told me to watch the light, the guards. And then one day I came back from work, and it was very, very cold, and I caught a cold, and I have temperature. And he said, "I'll go myself because you're sick. You need food. You need to get better." And I pleaded with him, "Please don't go." And sure enough, when he went out by himself, I was on pins and needles. Sure enough, about 10 minutes later, I heard a shot. And I said, God, please don't let it be him. Sure enough, he was shot. So then I had no friends. I had no friends at all. Except we didn't stay there too long either. We were shipped, we're not shipped. We walked to Bergen-Belsen. We walked for 18 days in the biggest snow, and all our clothes consisted of those striped jackets, striped pants, wooden shoes, and a cap. And it was so cold. We started off with about 100,000 people marching to Bergen-Belsen, where Anne Frank was. I don't know if he arrived with maybe 20,000 people. Either they were shot but not walking fast enough, or they froze to death.
I did not participate in a death march. Us, my three sisters and I, they put onto another cattle car before that happened. We were glad that we were shipped somewhere else because we thought it couldn't be worse than we were in Auschwitz. So the other camp was near Bergen-Belsen, which was another extermination camp. And we were supposed to work in the ammunition factory. 500 young women. My job was to cut up stones, paving stones, with an axe.
After the march, they put us into open coal carrying train. This is in December. Nothing unusual to have 10, 15, 20 below zero. And the only thing that saved me, the 4 or 5 days that I was in the coal carrying car, when we went under a tunnel, I was able to grab some ice and put it in my mouth. No food, no water. They moved us from Gleiwitz all the way to Buchenwald. It took 4 days. When we arrived in Buchenwald, I thought I was in heaven. Buchenwald had 3 different sections. Had the Jewish section, prisoner of war section, and political prisoner section. They gave us better food, more water, and we were treated more humanely. After being in Buchenwald for 4 or 5 months, they started evacuating Buchenwald.
But when we arrived, things was worse than it was before, because the war was coming to an end. We were just eating garbage, and they didn't have where to sleep because the camp was filled with dead bodies. People were dying left and right.
One night, when we were locked up in the barracks, we were hearing the heavy bombers flying above, so we could guess that there was something going to happen. The next morning, the cook who was working told the young women who worked in the kitchen that the camp was unattended. We all managed to go into the kitchen where could jump through this window, and we managed to crawl on our stomach into the nearest woods. And a lot of people got the same idea. And in the meantime, the local civilians came with their own trucks, and they took everybody to Bergen-Belsen. And after they left, we went back to the camp, and we couldn't find any food. So we went out and we met up with some soldiers, American soldiers, and I had a little English, asked them what day it was, and they said April 15, and 2 days later was my 15th birthday. The war was still going on, but we knew we were free.
This bulletin has come to you from the NBC newsroom in New York. The German news agency Transocean said today in a broadcast that the Allied invasion had begun.
Early Tuesday morning, numerous landing craft and light warships were observed in the area between the mouth of the Somme and the eastern coast of Normandy. At the same time, paratroops were dropped from numerous aircraft on the northern tip of the Normandy Peninsula.
This means invasion.
Well, by the time liberation came, I was very sick with typhus. That's the sickness and Frank died off. Everybody got sick, and when you have typhus, you're like a zombie. I was just laying around there on the snow, waiting to die. And when I saw some guys who were strong enough, who were running to the gate, I couldn't run because I was very weak. I asked them, what's going on there? So they said, some British Army tanks came. We are free.
The U.S. tank came into Buchenwald. The Germans tried to evacuate us out of the camp, and I knew I didn't have the strength, and so did my brother. And no matter how they were kicking us, beating us, shooting at us, a bullet hit me over here, but I didn't have much blood. If a miracle happened, our brother, who was in totally different camps, he was in Fünftachen, he comes up and he says, "Oh my God, you two are alive?" He couldn't believe it. He started crying, and we cried.
People who are still alive, they were laying all together, so they couldn't tell who's still alive or who was dead. So they came to each person and they looked in, the eyes to see if you're alive. I was just laying around there on the snow, waiting to die. It felt like a jeep drove next to me, and the soldier, opened my eyes.
One of the soldiers got out. He started putting water in my mouth, started feeding me. This U.S. soldier, to me, he was an angel.
I was so light that he just picked me up. So when he put me there, I just blacked out.
We knew that Switzerland was a neutral country. The danger was horrendous because the Nazis were already everywhere. So my parents, they decided to leave me and my brother in a convent, but at the last minute, my mother said, no, whatever happens to us will happen to the children. We walked through the mountains for about 2 days and 2 nights. When we got to Switzerland, to the border, actually, there were barbed wires. We were able to go under. My aunt got caught by the wire, and the bells started ringing. But thank God, somehow, for whatever reason, nobody showed up. And we presented ourselves to the border patrol. They sent us to a refugee camp. And we, the children, were sent to foster homes. After the war, we couldn't go back to Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia had become communist already. Tito was in power. He had taken everything that we owned. So we stayed in Italy again.
This was a very hard time. Even though we were free, we were in Germany because our home was already occupied by other people. One of my sisters and I managed to go to England. Later on, I managed to get into an art school. And while I was in that school, I applied and I got a scholarship to Denver University in Colorado.
After I was liberated in Buchenwald and I recovered, they took 800 orphans to England that were liberated in the concentration camps. And a family, first they took me to Laswell, Scotland, and then they took us to another place, and from there they took us to Burnley, Lancashire. And from there we were taken to London.
I was in Sweden for a year and a half in a hospital. It wasn't easy, but they helped me a lot. Then, of course, I wanted to go to America.
I refused to have charity pay for my trip, so I worked 2 jobs in London, England, till I saved up enough money to pay for my own fare. I came on the Queen Mary. I was so happy, I cried, that finally I arrived in a country that had true freedom, had an opportunity to be what you are. And I'm proud to say I served in the U.S. Army in the Korean War. And because I was an optician making glasses, and I had a very high clearance. They took me to St. Louis to make glasses for President Eisenhower, Truman, and Atchison. And when I came out of the Army, I started a business with my brother Bill, and we became the largest package home company in the United States.
My uncle sent me papers when I came to America. I was still very weak. This uncle of mine happened to be very, very poor. He went to the Jewish organization. They gave me some aptitude tests. So they decided they're gonna send me to a jeweler's and watchmaker school. And I went there for 18 months and I learned the trade. They also got me a job, temporary job. And then eventually I went into business myself.
My parents decided they wanted to come to America. And at the beginning, the thought was to come here to United States, but then that program changed and we went to Argentina. But my father didn't find work that suited him. So we moved to Colombia. I had 3 children. After Colombia, we lived in Canada for 5 years. After 5 years, we moved to Israel.
After Israel, where did you go next?
To Miami. That was it. I came to Miami a little over 40 years ago.
I came to this country end of 1949. I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts, got a master's degree in fine art education, and then I got married. Then I had 2 daughters, 6 grandchildren, and now I have a little great-grandchild. So I'm considering myself very lucky that I survived what I did. I'm very sorry that I had to go through all that, but with all that, I'm very grateful that I am still here and alive, and that I can talk with you, and that I can show you what hatred has done.
Hating is not good. I want children to know how important it is not to get involved in the wrong things. To love people, to be kind to people is more important than anything else. Opportunities are totally unlimited here in America, but you got to do the right things.
One thing I would say to my generation is we're very fortunate that we don't have to go through a war at a very young age where we have to run away from home in order to protect the rest of our family, and we're threatened.
I think you should learn that by being mean or bad, nothing good will happen. Race doesn't matter. White, black, Jew, Hindu, that doesn't make any difference. Everybody is the same, and you should teach the world how to do that.
Always be kind to people, because many people in our generation are always down, and it's horrible. So
we have to be kind. It starts from home, and it starts from young age that we have to learn to be accepting of each other. We cannot change the world in one day, but we can show little kindness towards each other, respect each other, because hatred did this to me and millions of others.
When you put yourself in that person's shoes, you can see what they're going through, and you won't have the mindset of judging someone again or discriminating towards them.
Be understanding to other people, because this could happen to anyone at any moment.
Ordinary people like you and me had the courage to take action that basically saved our lives. They did it out of the goodness of their hearts and just because it was the right thing to do. There is a well-known quote from the Talmud, one of the sacred books in Judaism, where it says, "Whoever saves one life saves the world." Helping one person might not change the whole world, but it could change the world for one person. We need to acknowledge the dark times and never forget the 6 million Jews that perished during the Holocaust. But the best way to honor their memories, it's not only to remember, it's by creating awareness, by creating a change in our world so that this doesn't happen ever, 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 ever again.
We are Rachel's children, and we carry her name. We are Rachel's children, and we light her flame. We see her strength, her dignity. We know her sacrifice. We are Rachel's children, calling her name. We are Rachel's children, and we bear her pain. We are Rachel's children, may it not be in vain. Buried alone, Bethlehem Road, no peace within her soul. We are Rachel's children.